Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the PowettPlay Podcast. It's me, Jordan Shannon, and as always, I'm joined by Kieran Powell. How are you, Kai?
Not too bad, John. Early start for the morning for me. Never mind, it's almost 11 o'clock. How
Oh,
about you?
yeah, I'm good, thank you. It's a grim day. The weather's horrendous here in Manchester, but you know what? What do we expect with the English summer? We had our summer in May, so that's the way it's going to be, I think. But it was a glorious evening last night in Durham. I don't think, obviously, from a West Indies perspective, it was that glorious. A bit of a frustrating performance, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, it just West Indies looked out of it. It wasn't competitive at all. I- for me, the way that the West Indies go about T20 cricket being boundary hitters, I think, you know, they have to choose an approach because, it's been obviously well documented that the West Indies don't rotate the strike well.
No.
So for me, they have to either go all the way in on boundary hitting, and either you get bowled out for 90 or you get 250, or they have to completely change their approach because the current approach, it doesn't work. It's not worked for a long time. And I don't see it working anytime soon. So they need to, I guess, start afresh with a new mandate because we think of West Indies as boundary hitters, but everyone's thinking of the teams that were successful in winning World Cups and stuff. They're not thinking about this iteration of West Indies teams.
Yeah.
You look at those teams, you had Chris Gale, Marlon Samuels, Lyndall Simmons, the Fletchers, the Johnson Charles, um, Pollard for the first one. But you had a lot of experienced players, the Dwayne Bravos, etc., Dennis Ramlins. You had a lot of
Yeah.
thinking players. And I'm not saying that these guys aren't thinking players, but you had a lot more experienced players
Yeah.
across formats that could adapt and play different situations.
Yeah.
I think that right now, it from me, from an outside standpoint, it looks as though it's just thinking about boundaries, but it's not building off, I guess, strategic in terms of who you're looking to take down.
Yeah.
And I know that's something I've heard Chris Gill talk about, Marlon Samuels talk about at extensive lengths during my time playing cricket with them in terms of understanding who to take down, when to take down, who to get through, different things like that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
for me, the current model is broken. It's clear to see, and it needs to be changed.
So with that in mind, you're saying you either go one way where it's all hitters and we've bowled out for 90, or the other approach. What would you do with the players that you've got at this moment in time? Where would you go with it?
With these guys, it doesn't make sense to try and change them to rotating the strike. I'd tell them, look, every over, I need
Oh,
us to score. We
yeah.
need to score at least two boundaries per over.
Right.
If whatever else we get off the next four balls, that's fine.
Yeah.
But we need to score two boundaries, whether it's two fours, two sixes, a six and a four,
Yeah.
whatever the case is, and go as hard as you can. Because you're talking about 20 overs, 10 wickets. So basically, you can afford to lose a wicket every two overs.
Yeah.
So I need you guys, especially in the power play, because obviously our struggles against spin are well documented.
Massive.
Everyone does it now, even in English conditions where the ball isn't spinning.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not even spin, it's
12
just
overs
slow ball.
yesterday.
So what I would do is my openers, I need you to go extremely hard in the power play. I need you to get
Right.
as close to 100 as I don't need 40 to 60 anymore.
Right.
I need you to be sort of 80 to 100, even if we're two down. I need to be 80 to 100 in that first six because then that forces the opposition team to probably bowl an over or two of spin in the power play. So that takes away and that negates you having to face that extra one or two overs in the
Yeah.
middle
Yeah.
against power hitters that gives them um, pace on the ball that they can potentially be more deadly and more successful against through the middle and the back end of the game.
Yeah. So with that in mind, how would you adjust the batting lineup based on the players to suit that sort of approach?
Well, I think because I sent some notes through
Yeah, I've got. I
in
have actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I sent some notes through yesterday, and for me, it's interesting because you've got Evan Lewis, Shea Hope, Brandon King, and Johnson Charles.
Yeah.
Only two of those four can play. Obviously, Shea Hope is captain. So for me, Shea Hope has to open the batting. Again, we're talking about Shea Hope opening the batting. But especially in T20 cricket, you look at it in the T20 World Cup and prior to this, like when he did get into the team, he had to open the batting because obviously his strike rate, etc. So you're gonna give him the advantage of batting in the power play when the field is up because he's not necessarily a big six hitter; he's more sort of boundary hitter. So you want to give him as much opportunities as possible to get the ball over or through the infield where he can get boundaries.
Yeah.
And for me, I'd go with Evan Lewis, obviously for that left-right combination.
Yeah.
Evan obviously being very destructive when he's in form and fit. Um, and then you look at the middle order, you've got obviously Nicholas Purden isn't there right now. I don't know what that situation is, if he's going to be playing in the World Cup or playing in future series or whatever the case is, but I'm working on the pretense that he is.
Yeah.
You've got obviously a Nicholas Purden, a Shimron Hetmyer who didn't play yesterday, Sherfane Rutherford,
Yeah.
Rothman Powell. Those are your guys that sort of fill up your middle order.
Yeah.
And again, I'm asking those guys to go as hard as possible. And obviously extending that middle order, you have the likes of the Roston Chases, the Jason Holder, the Romario Shepherd, and the Andre Russell.
Yeah.
As well as Akil Hussein, who hasn't made it because of visa issues, Gudakesh Morty, and Alzari Joseph. So those are sort of the guys that are in and around, I guess, first choice selections for making the 11. I think what stood out yesterday for me is that the West Indies need to identify who bowls where. Because normally, obviously, Akil Hussein opens the bowling and bowls in the power play. But I think it might have been a blessing in disguise that he wasn't able to be granted a visa because now you had to use two seam bowlers up front where Akil Hussein gives you that coverage. And I thought for me that it was a blessing for the West Indies that obviously Phil Salt wasn't playing as well because he's normally been the thorn in the West Indies side in these T20 series against England. He normally scores centuries upon centuries. So we got to see a different challenge. But obviously Joss Butler was too good yesterday. And I think that, it was interesting because sometimes you'd see guys going full and wide, but with third man up and a lot of balls edging past or over third man, with a deep point and a sweeper back. So, like some of the field placings, some of the tactics that the bowlers used and employed wasn't necessarily the greatest. So I think it was just a lot of role clarity because as the innings went on, the bowlers actually got to grips with the pitch, the dimensions of the field, and how they wanted the batters to play. But at that point, it was a bit too late anyway. But restricting England to 189 when I thought that they might have been chasing 200 plus at a very minimum, based on the start that they had, was a good comeback. But you'd prefer, from a West Indian standpoint, to see them start properly and execute that throughout the middle stages and the end of the game, as opposed to oppositions getting away and you having to play catch up and chase and pull back the game from a bowling standpoint. I think it also, in my opinion, highlighted why the West Indies board created the Breakout League. Because you can see that there were troubles through pretty much all stages and phases of the game in terms of getting wickets. I'm not sure that the Breakout League threw up too many options in terms of seam bowlers that could come in and make a difference straight away. But I think that if you look at what it did in terms of spinners, and if you look at what's happened from since, I think that potentially you look at the A-team series that's just happened, you had the leg spinner Daryl Cyrus playing in that series. So he's obviously someone that they're telling me to keep an eye out for in probably one of these series coming up. You look at the CPL draft that happened, was it yesterday or the day before? I keep talking about Micah McKenzie. You see which team he got picked up by, St. Lucia, who's head coach by Darren Sammy.
Correct.
And I have been stating that I think that he will be playing for the West Indies in the short-term future,
Yeah.
and given an opportunity to play and develop over time. So I think those are guys that will probably be on the radar in the not too distant future for ODI and T20 cricket.
Yeah.
I think another, I guess, or two other wildcard picks. Obviously, Jed Gooley was supposed to be
Yeah.
in this team, but obviously him again, along with Akil Hussain, wasn't able to obtain the visa on time. And I think another off spin bowling all rounder that um, could potentially be in the mix is Kofi James. If
Yeah.
you look at the Breakout League and
Again,
then
yeah.
him getting picked up by the Barbados Royals for the price tag that he did as a young guy, suggests to me that obviously there would be further future thinking, future plans
Yeah.
because of how things are panning out. So you've got two young leg spin options that, in my opinion, seem to be or seem to have been prioritized at the moment, as well as two off spin all rounders as well. So um, I think that those guys will probably get an opportunity at some point, maybe one or two of them
Yeah.
at some point in the not too distant future. Um, I think that the batting isn't really as much as a problem, but I think for me, it shows that, again, I stated the same thing with the start of the series in Ireland.
Yeah.
Guys shouldn't leave home unless they've come from directly from a camp for 7 to 10 days so that they can knock off that rust.
Yeah.
A few guys looked a bit rusty, a bit slow off the blocks.
Yeah.
I expect them to get better as this series goes on, and obviously into
Yeah.
Ireland when they should be kicking into full gear.
Yeah.
But there's no point of having guys train at home in their own individual setting when you have the I guess the high performance setup in Antigua. You know, you can bring guys in and have them practice under the tutelage of your coaches in the manner or in the light that is befitting of what the head coach is expecting from them when they come on tour. So they hit the ground running. So those are, small little tweaks that I'd like to see that I think will make a big difference in terms of how the West Indies start series and play throughout the course of the series.
Yeah, definitely. Going back a little bit in terms of how you broke everything down there, which is brilliant as always. Do you see an option for Roston to potentially open the bowling, squeeze a couple in early, especially with the left-handed Duckett opening the batting potentially?
Possibly, but Duckett's opening with
Jamie Smith.
Jamie Smith, and it would be Jamie Smith's job to capitalize on Roston obviously being
Yeah,
the right-hander coming
yeah.
in. If it's a ground where there's a big leg side boundary and you
That's
can
what I'm
play
thinking.
that too, yeah,
There was yesterday. There was
yeah,
one shorter boundary where you could potentially, if you got it right. I thought yesterday it could have worked because
yeah,
that's what they did really well. England, they utilised that. They utilised that spin bowling really well in a way where
yeah,
obviously Liam Dawson 4 overs, five and over. He went for five, and then Adil Rashid 4 overs at 5.5 and over. So there's 8 overs there. They've
yeah.
got to work out a plan tomorrow and then Tuesday then the third one. How do we face these 8 overs of leg
Yeah.
spin and left arm spin, basically?
So in my opinion, Liam Dawson and Jacob Bethel, whatever overs they bowl, have to be going for 10 to 15 and over
Yeah,
because they're not genuine spinners of the ball, and that puts pressure on the captain and the England team to find other overs
yeah,
because if you make it a situation where between the two of them you only get 4 overs,
yeah,
then your seamers have to have a perfect day.
yeah,
Um, Even if Adil Rashid has a perfect day, because you can then sort of put pressure on the rest of the bowling attack because you're not allowing Liam Dawson to bowl and settle
no,
into a rhythm. So I think it's important, as I said, like for me, if I were this iteration of the West Indies
yeah,
T20 team, I wouldn't on the side of trying to gear towards strike rotation. I would be going as hard as I possibly can.
yeah,
And I can get ball out for 119, 15 overs. That's fine. As opposed to being 130 for 8 and struggling through to get 160.
Yeah,
I'm gonna back my guys and the skill set that they have. Forget about what we need long term. This
yeah,
is what we have currently with a World Cup in 9 months' time, if
yeah.
that month. I'm going as hard as I possibly can, get used to doing that. So by the time that World Cup comes around, this is our brand. We are going to attack and attack heavily. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, we go again tomorrow
Yeah.
and we attack heavily again.
I think what the term you use there is absolutely spot on. What brand of cricket are West Indies going to be playing, and determining that, and then you stick to it, and then you go to that World Cup in that brand. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and then you obviously have to adapt post World Cup, and you go again. But what you're saying there is absolutely spot on. It's figuring out a brand and sticking to it and riding by that, and ultimately, that's when you get the strategy. If it doesn't work, you go back and you look at the analysis side of things. Going back, I want to speak to you about the game again a little bit more yesterday, because watching that game yesterday, I thought when Roston and Evan Lewis were batting together, they took when Evan Lewis got out. I thought they were in a good position. I wouldn't say a great position or a strong position, but I would say they were in a good position. And he took Jacob Bethel for 20 in the over, and then he got out, and it just changed the game massively. And I just thought to myself at that moment in time, did he have to go for that one big shot again? And would he be? And in the game situation as it was playing, he would have been better off looking at rotating the strike than being at the other end with the shorter boundary. And it was just that little bit of that game management aspect that I thought they lacked a little bit in certain parts of the game, where it could have then moved that rotation in their favour with the firepower that they had behind them potentially. What did you make of that period again? Did you feel he was in a good position, or am I looking at it a bit too positively?
I thought that they were starting to get into a good
Nice.
position.
Yeah.
The start wasn't necessarily the fastest, but I think that that over started to gear them towards being in a good position.
Yeah.
But having said that, that is the way that I guess T20 cricket is played now, where you just continue going. Because you look at the first innings when England batted and how Jamie Smith got out. It was sort of the same thing where he
Yeah.
took
Yeah.
Morty for quite a big over as well.
Yeah.
And he got out in the last ball of that over. So I think
Yeah.
guys are looking at maximizing overs as much as possible when you have a big over. And as I said, with this team, I'm trying to go as hard as possible.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah. I'm
no,
contradicting
as
you
you
in that.
as you rightfully mentioned, in doing so, you still have an element of game management and cricket awareness that you have to display. And understanding that you have 20 out of the over. Would 24 or 26 be more beneficial than you being the set batsman and being there for the next
Yeah.
over? So,
Yeah.
it's a catch-22 thing. I would have obviously preferred for an Evan Lewis to get a single or even a dot ball, because his capabilities, the level of destruction that he can
Oh, yeah.
cause, not many people in the world can match that when
No.
he's on song, and he was looking pretty good. But I mean, as I said, if you're gonna go hard all the way through.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it didn't work out. But I wouldn't blame these guys,
No.
given, as I said, the type of brand of cricket I think they should play. I would double down and back them to go even harder, almost unfortunately, almost a baseball type approach. It would be a sandball. They can start playing sandball because it's T20 cricket. So Darren Sammy has his own version of baseball, and see how that works out.
Yeah, definitely. I just wanted to run that by because I felt like I said at that stage. But with what you're saying is right, identifying that brand of cricket and sticking to it, and within that squad, everybody knows what the plan is and what that strategic going hard mentality is. But yeah, I think that totally agree with you with that. I think that's the way to go. Do you see any changes to the 11 tomorrow?
I'm not sure. I think there may be scope for, as I said, for me, for Shea Hope going up to opening the batting, which gives you a bit more of a dynamic opportunity in the middle order to bring in a different player that can potentially aid in you going harder
Yeah.
for longer through the middle stages of the game. But I don't know. I don't know what other changes they can make that will make any significant impact.
No. No, not really. I think no, no. When I looked at that, I just think, yeah, you could change your Matthew Ford for a Jason Holder, but again, does it really change that much in the balance of the side? Could you bring in Hetmeyer for somebody else? I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. In terms of that, like you said, when you've identified what you identified at the start of the pod, it's about spin bowling. What have we got? How can we go with that? It's about, so yeah, I don't think in terms of the changing the 11 too much would make that much difference in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, I think hopefully, like I said, hopefully it becomes more competitive tomorrow, more competitive. And then going into Ireland, I do see that there'll be, I think they'll brush Ireland aside quite comfortably if the way that they can do really.
Yeah, I don't want to take Ireland for granted because I think that's probably what happened with the ODI series when we started there as well. So I think more so than anything, it's the approach. It needs to be an approach of desperation, as opposed to anything else. And see guys really go out there and put England under the pump, I guess, for want of a better description, but
Yeah,
really put some pressure on England and see how England responds to that. Because at the end of the day, it's still a new T20 captain. These are still relatively young, inexperienced bowlers. And so I think that if you put them in pressure situations, I mean, you look at a Matthew Potts towards the end of the game, obviously the game has already been won, but, still trying to find his feet and going for a few runs towards the end. If you can do that from earlier within the game against, I guess, let's say two of their main seamers and Liam Dawson, then it's a completely different ball game because you've got a bowling attack that's scrabbled and the captain having to find solutions.
yeah. The On your note that you sent through, you mentioned about Kyle Myers. Do you think there is a way in for him into this squad at some point?
Well, I don't know what's happened there because he's just completely gone out of West Indies cricket from
Mhm.
since the new coaching um staff has come in.
Yeah,
I don't know what's happened there because I think that he, again, as I said, offers a bit of a different aspect in terms of his power hitting.
yeah,
Obviously, him being a left-hander as well. I know he's been mainly used up at the top of the order. I'm not sure if there's any space for him in the middle because there's quite a few left-handers in the middle as well. But I just think that he's obviously an experienced and a good player. And that's not even just talking T20 cricket. I'd like to see him sort of in and around that test team as well, because you look at, um, I guess, the most successful test all rounders we've had of recent times. You're thinking of, obviously, as my brain can go back, you're thinking about the Dwayne Bravos, the coach Darren Sammy himself,
yeah.
and Jason Holder. Kyle Mayers probably has the highest batting average of the lot and the lowest bowling average. So
Mhm.
not sure what's happened there, but I think that he's still young enough to have an impact and play for a few more years.
He's only 32, so
Yeah.
why would I not know? No, so yeah, brilliant to debrief that and the points you've covered as always. I just want to, while we're here, keep liking and keep commenting. Kieran's coming back to these questions, and it's really, really good to get everyone's feedback on what you think. Discussing various selection issues and why certain people aren't playing and this and that. So please keep commenting because it's really good to get that interaction. I know we've been discussing it for a few weeks, but we will be doing a Q&A podcast very soon as well. So keep firing those questions in and we'll be addressing them and Karen will be getting back to you. But thank you so much for joining us on the PowettPlay podcast and we will see you all soon.
Cheers, guys.